There is a quote by Vladimir Lenin, the leader of the communist revolution in Russia, which goes, "We can and must write in a language which sows among the masses hate, revulsion, and scorn towards those who disagree with us." Hi, I'm Ohranje Gallante, and you're listening to episode 10 of Fostering Freedom. Today, I'm going to be talking about how no country or no person should and shouldn't have helped India to begin with. Now, the reason why I said that quote in the beginning is that many of you in the right wing circles, and certainly, I include people in the right wing circles who are into, Austrian economics as well, although there's many people on left as well, at least socially so, that, appreciate or understand Austrian economics. It is not limited to us, but certainly I would say that roughly 85% of the people that understand Austrian economics fall on the right wing of the political spectrum or whatever, right? And there's a reason for that. The reason is that many of the leftist policies and the left itself is uneconomical. Certainly, many socially left are, a part of us, are into Austrian economics and call themselves libertarians as well, which is the most famous kind of libertarianism, I would say, or that is actually changing faster than I thought it would of recent when, libertarians on the right have kind of started to fight, if you will, with the left libertarians, for presence and to show that, yes, we exist, don't forget about us and things of that nature. Just that it hasn't seeped or rather climbed onto the surface level, right? The surface which understands that, yeah, libertarians are not some wacko, hippie, open borders type of stuff. But anyway, most of them are in the right wing because they understand the uneconomic nature of the left, right? And the point that I wanted to bring with that is that by saying, before I stated even this, I was going to say that people buy into the empathetic language of the left and think that somehow they're in the right? But what appears empathetic isn't always empathetic to begin with. You may think that you're doing some good by donating to a charity in Africa, and certainly there's a psychic profit to that. When you donate money there, you get the comfort that you made someone's life better. But did you? Did you really? If you are a logical person, you'd follow the entire way through what happens when your money goes there. What happens when you do spend money on certain things or, give to charity, or when these people receive this money? What actually goes on in that scenario? Just as an analysis, right? Not the logistics of it or what the material things that they got now because of your donation or how many people were able to attend school and things of that nature. Not that. See, the reason that I say this is if there's a heroin addict and you're giving them more heroin, is that really empathetic? Because yes, if you stop giving them heroin, or if they stop finding heroin or using heroin, they will get withdrawals, their mental state would deteriorate, and they will throw panic, and their health may go down for a little bit, especially the mental health will go down for a little bit. So, you would say from a leftist lens or from the leftist understanding of empathy, people would say that, wow, what a horrible, cruel thing to do to deny heroin to a heroin addict, right? But what they fail to see is that when I incentivize this addiction, when I give this person the heroin, that they're addicted to, I'm hurting them in long term. Because one day they're gonna look back when they finally are able to quit, or maybe they'll just overdose and die, and that's not empathetic at all, right? Or they're gonna look back at all the years of life that they wasted and all the people that enabled it, and he's not gonna think about you as an empathetic person. When people talk about having good friends, people often say that best friends are the ones that get hammered with you, while good friends are the ones that discourage you from drinking too much and getting back to home safely and dropping you off and all these sorts of things. Well, that is true, because best friends, maybe, people who are your best friends usually are the ones that are too similar to you, right? They don't really, they're as stupid as you and as dumb as you most of the time, and they may not really have the best interest at heart. And if you are over the age of 30 and listening to this podcast, or even 25, I've realized this very, early on, but you will realize that, okay, very few of your friends, or, most probably the people that you called your best friends are not your best friends anymore. But the people that were your good friends, that you didn't heavily involve yourself with as much, but you still were, friends with them, on good terms with them, they are more of a long time friend with you, the ones that really had your best interest in mind all the time, than anyone that you actually called your best friend at the time, right? So being a good friend, a good friend is the one who's disincentivizing you from doing the bad things, right? While the best friend is getting involved. Well, dude, this got a little bit derailed, but this is kind of like that, right? The leftist empathy is kind of like that. That you would incentivize behavior like a best friend, right? Or something of that nature. You are discouraging them to improve by themselves. And that is what they do. When we talk about empathy, we should look at it from an restricted sort of lens. I was going to say unrestricted, which is why I said am, but anyway, you should look at it in a restricted way, right? In a constrained way, that, okay, there's only so many things that we can do, and we should, if we are empathetic, do what is best in the long term, right? And supplying water to someone who's living in the desert right now is not empathetic at all, because what that does, and this may seem cool at first when you're listening to this, wow, what a cool human being, he doesn't want people to get water where there's no water available. Well, the reality is humans are not supposed to live in deserts. Might be a great shocker for some of you, but really, humans are supposed to live where there is water, there is greenery, there's life, there's plants, there's agriculture. These are the centers of civilization throughout humanity. And people will listen to this, and usually the midwits retort to this is, well, if you look at a lot of civilizations, they formed around areas that, were deserted and whatnot. Well, give me an example of one civilization that did not have a major river around it. You will not find it. You will really not find it. Tigris, Euphrates, Nile, the Indus River, which you now know was actually the Saraswati River, which where the colony was based off of. It just died, the river, later on. But the Indus Valley civilization was on the Saraswati River, which is another river, right? All these Ganges, all these rivers, Yellow Rivers, Yangtze River, I think they're both the same, I'm not sure. But all these rivers are, obviously where human civilization grows. And how does that connect to giving water to someone who's in the desert? Well, what you're doing when you're giving water to someone who's in the desert is that you're incentivizing them from not moving to a better situation for themselves. You're prolonging this process. And what's so wrong about this process is that if they moved in from such a situation to a better situation if they migrated. Humans migrate throughout history for varied reasons, and these are one of the reasons. Resources get diminished over time, right? And resources change. The earth changes, right? The nature around you is not a permanent thing. It changes over time. Yes, it takes a lot of time to change many times. It takes hundreds of centuries, and maybe even millennia to change. But the signs of change is slowly happen. It's not like, as soon as that 1,000th year mark hit, that the river disappeared. No, it disappeared slowly over time. It shrank a little bit. The water level shrank. There was a shortage of water, perhaps, and perhaps a lot more people had to walk a lot longer distance to find water for themselves. And over time, this kind of these slow changes motivate people to move around and get themselves in a better situation than they otherwise were in, right? So when you provide someone with a water tanker or some kind of a nonsense device that provides them with temporary source of water in the desert, what you're really doing is disincentivizing them from moving to a better location. And what that does is all the years and all the time that they wasted staying there by absorbing or taking in the water that you're providing them, they could have really spent that time moving somewhere else, slowly, little by little, somehow, however they do it. People struggle a lot, from a first world lens or a comfortable lens, in, no matter where you are. You may not realize it, but there's a lot of fundamental struggles to life that we don't have to deal with anymore, but our ancestors did deal with it. And it is a reality of life that there's a lot of people that deal with these struggles on a day in, day out basis still. That's just a fact. How do you improve the situation? Well, certainly you cannot incentivize this behavior. You cannot incentivize them to stay where they are and waste the precious time in the process. It's better that their children move to a city or, a better situation, a small town, wherever they have the basic resources to survive one way or another, than continue living in these places. And maybe when they move to these situations, they'll find better opportunities for life. Maybe their children, it is unfortunate, but, a lot of places, these children do work and work meaningfully as well, and learn in the process as well, which is far better than going to school, as I'll tell you later on in the podcast, perhaps. But anyway, when they do this, their children get more opportunities to work. They can do something, maybe basket weaving or whatever, menial tasks there exist. Their parents could find something to do, maybe work at someone's shop, someone's house, become a maid or something or the other of that nature, wash dishes, clothes, whatever, any form of work, and they can better their lives than before. That is what happens when you disincentivize living in these places. Nobody's supposed to live in the desert, okay? These desert territories exist in the control of these countries only because of the resources that are there, that are, these resources are not really water and trees or whatever. These are usually petrol and minerals and these sorts of things. So that is the reason for why they have the control. But for the tribals that live there and that have to deal with not having water and basic resources to survive, at that point, they're not really selling the petrol or digging the petrol or doing anything at that point. If you are such an NGO, or if you're such an empathetic person, the best solution is actually to form a company there that somehow strike a deal with the government or do something that gives these people jobs, and that allows them to have the resources to now be productively employed there, and then be able to gather the resources, or not gather, but just get the resources, because now they have purchasing power with them from somewhere else, right? So that is one of the most empathetic things that you could do. Of course, their governments are never going to do it. We had a similar problem here where the government just took over tribal lands, and then they gave them certain autonomy rights in name only. But when they took them over, they made these mines, right? And they in these mines, what they did was they first initially said that, yeah, when we do open these mines, we're going to employ you. But then when these mines opened, what they did was that they employed all the intellectual exam givers who gave exams to the government or something and passed them through. And all these people that were sorted out from excess employment in other places from government, they got transferred into work on these mines and stuff. And the tribals were super pissed off about this. So Maoists came along and they gave them arms and were like, yo, we're going to fight for your rights because they stole your land and took it over. And that's what they did. The Maoists actually took over the fucking mines that actually belonged to the tribals, and now they manage the resources on behalf of them. They actually sell those resources and allow the tribals to live a life off of these resources. But that aside, these are the things that are empathetic. These making resources where they're not. Now, foreign aid, IMF, loans, all these things, loans are one of the things that people look at and are like, oh my god, this is not like foreign aid. This is a loan. Giving them loan just on lenient conditions. Yeah, I mean, you're giving them loans so that these countries can build infrastructure and do this and do that. But what you're doing, sorry for banging my mouth on mic there, if you heard that. But what you're doing when you do this sort of thing, when you give them a lenient loan or something like that, you're incentivizing the bad policies to continue longer than they otherwise would have. India is one of the cases, and many of the countries in Africa or any of these third world countries are really that are charity cases, of the world. They're in this situation because of a lot of foreign aid and a lot of NGOs, a lot of United Nations work and all that. Which, by the way, they do a lot of evil stuff, the United Nations, but they, you never know. Just look up World Wildlife Federation killing villages or something like that. You'll find hundreds, if not thousands, of examples of them displacing entire villages, burning them down, destroying their livelihoods just to save animals, right? You never want to destroy these tribals and force them to live in poverty in cities now because they get displaced by the World Wildlife Federation, and they kill a lot of people at the lieu of poaching, which the governments have granted them rights to do, which is completely immoral that any government would give any foreign body authorization, monopoly over killing anybody that they deem to be a poacher. I don't think that they're killing only poachers. Nobody's that simple-minded or kind-hearted, and that is proven by the track record of World Wildlife Federation doing all the decrepit shit that they have been doing throughout the world. But anyway, when you do give these loans, what you do is incentivize these bad policies to continue, because what happens in these nations when these loans go through, or when these loans, charity, foreign aid, any of these projects go through, is not really that some kind of an improvement happens. Any politician that at the time is sitting at the helm of that nation takes credit for any projects that happen as a result of that, right? Be it that particular state or province within that nation, or that entire nation in and of itself. If it's rather big project or something like that is based off of IMF loans, and IMF loans have been notorious in the past for doing or supporting dictatorships and whatnot in South America, and people assume that is no longer the case. That okay, they've toned it down and they've corrected the course, they've learned from their mistakes. Well, no, they haven't learned from their mistakes, because you're still incentivizing bad behavior and bad policies to continue, right? And you can see my point throughout these things, right? When these policies happen, these politicians are the ones who take credit. And people think that, okay, progress is happening, something's happening, so they continue on having these bad policies in place, having these bad politicians in place, having their bad government in place, and cooperating with them and letting them or allowing them to just do whatever. And God knows we are not even getting in the territory of misallocation of funds. How much of the money goes straight into the pockets of politicians to, make mansions or whatever. How many contractors are linked to them internally, under the table to do what with this money? Because anytime money goes somewhere, money is not the thing that is making those projects happen. Somebody else has to make it happen. So money has to land somewhere in someone's lap to do this. And they can fudge the numbers or report any cost in miscellaneous or whatever. You can do anything with accounting magic, right? Report a lot of things as costing this or that amount. Just have a contractor, have a deal with them, tell them that, okay, we're going to price fix with you. We're going to award you the contract. You're going to say that the sand that we sold you, that you sold to the government, costs this much. And we're hiring you because the sand quality is so good that it is the most unique sand in the world, and no other sand could do the job that you are providing us. So they provide these justifications this way, and they get that's how they pour the money in. So if there's $10 million that are sent to you, and this politician wants to pocket, or this government wants to pocket, let's say 5-6 million out of it, they're gonna say, okay, well, the sand costs about this many million, and a small cut goes to the contractor, and another small cut goes to the parties involved from the government that are distributing this money behind the scenes, because it all lands in the bank accounts somewhere, and then you can just magic fuckery, just make in charge of shell companies, a lot of people that you're giving for lots of services that are not really there. You can do a lot of things. Corruption happens in thousands and thousands of ways we don't even know about, and it's in our plain sight, and we'll never know about them. There's a lot of window dressing that goes on, for example. And so when we incentivize this behavior, when the world incentivizes this behavior, what really is happening, let's get back to India, right? India's oxygen situation right now is entirely created by the government and its bad policies. I was looking up, and someone on Twitter said that it takes 123 agencies to go through to create a hospital in India. And if you know anything about India, that each of these agencies where the file lands is going to take a small cut, a price to approve your project, or it's going to stay there forever. And even if you get all those 123 agencies to approve your project, after paying all this money, then still there's the risk of inspectors and God knows what else that is going to come to your hospital. They're going to find one thing that is misplaced somewhere, a knob maybe missing from some kind of a plastic equipment, and they're going to be like, well, the whole thing's canned, and they pretend like that. I mean, I've seen it firsthand in real life, these inspectors going to these places, and just start, many times they come with police officers, by the way, and they have batons, like large, sticks, and they start breaking stuff because you're doing something highly illegal. So they pretend to break stuff, and it's really like an extortion. It's appalling to see. It is an extortion tactic that happens. They start breaking stuff around you, and this may sound shocking and insane and really monkey-like, but this is how they behave. That's what they really do. They start breaking stuff in front of your eyes, and the proprietor panics when they start doing this, and they try to calm them down, and they, kind of shake their hand or whatever to signal that they're going to give the money, and then they provide the money behind the scenes to these inspectors, and that pacifies them for 6 months, a year, or whatever. And there's no guarantee in this. There's no written contract that, he's not going to come back. It's just that you never know. It's really like a protection racket. And, throughout this time, anytime this guy can show up again and just demand, if his child is getting married and he needs some money, he's going to visit every goddamn hospital in that year. Let's say the marriage is in 2 years from now. Those 2 years, this entire department is going to be the most active department in that entire city. They're going to pay visit to every single nursing home, every single hospital that exists in that city, and he's going to collect all the money that he needs to have the most luxurious wedding that you can, otherwise people can never afford. And that is how things go. So, what is happening right now on the ground is that people cannot make hospitals of their own. People cannot make their own oxygen supplying business. People cannot have a lot of things that are associated with this. And there's a reason why most private hospitals, or a lot of private hospitals, have a politician on their board of directors here. And that is done because having a powerful politician on board is going to expedite the process, right? Or a powerful bureaucrat is going to expedite the process of you getting approvals from these places. No inspector is going to show up and demand this or that, because now his job is going to be at risk. Because if you have a politician like that on place, he can pull a lot of strings. He can make sure that, okay, if an inspector shows up and he's still causing shenanigans, he's going to get transferred to some bumfuck nowhere place where, when he goes to shit, 50,000 malaria mosquitoes, bite his ass, and he gets sick and stays sick throughout the year, and it's a living hell. His life becomes a living hell. That's what having a politician ensures you from, from these things. It ensures you from these risks, so to say. So that's how bad things are on the ground. That's how bad things are in reality. And this is there for every kind of business, every kind of service that you want to provide out of the kindness of your heart, or anything like that. So when the UK or any country that is promising, even the US, supplying vaccine things or whatever, keep this in mind, that you're continuing these bad, morally decrepit, downright evil policies that are harbored by law in this socialist nation. That is what is happening, right? That it is so hard to do basic stuff on your own that everything becomes such a huge problem. Take oxygen manufacturing. Right now during COVID, they're not busy trying to save lives. They're busy. I'm reading stories literally every day of some black marketer or another getting caught. A group of 10 people got caught for making oxygen and selling it on the black market. This many people are getting caught for selling remdesivir or whatever the name is on the black market. Well, they're saving lives because your system is entirely failing, yet you're busy arresting them. Now, the reason they arrest them is not because they're out of the kindness of their hearts or something like that. They're gonna make example cases out of one of them guys, or one of them groups or whatever. Just by sending them to jail, just to keep this illusion alive that the law and order works or whatever. But for the rest of the guys, they're gonna take the money, and fuck off. They're gonna take money from them because they know that these guys are making money out of this, so they want a piece of the action. They want a cut of the action, and that's what they'll do. And they'll move on from there, right? So, these are people that are supplying these things because in the fair market, or not the fair market, I should say legal white market, what is happening is that nobody's allowed to do anything. So what is going on after the fact is that the Defense Department is being called in a lot of places to make hospitals, for civilians. And they're not big hospitals, it's just like 500 beds in some kind of a tent or shed type location, and that's it. They're calling them hospitals and being very proud of them. One hospital got made near, some big museum-like place or something like that. And what they're doing is that it's a 500-something bed hospital, or maybe it's 700. And it took 15 days until a politician came and inaugurated that hospital. 15 days. And until that time, not a single patient was there. Not a single person was admitted there, because all were waiting for the honorable minister to organize or inaugurate this hospital, right? The equipment is there, everything's ready, the military's done all this stuff, and yet they waited 10 to 15 days or something like that, to inaugurate this hospital. This is the level of mismanagement that you're seeing here. And the Western countries and the Western media, the bugmen of there are like, oh my god, you gotta help them. They're in such a crisis right now. Well, if it was up to civilians, we're ready to help. We're ready to do all these things. There's plenty of people that would make a hospital right now. Just get someone, set up like an expo like situation, or just take any of these places where you can have like theaters or whatever, remove the chairs and rent that place, lease that place, have beds there that you can then sell off and sell off cheaper than hospitals. Because of the shortage of hospitals, the prices are going through the roof, obviously, and doctors are so scared because they cannot advise until test results are back. Test results are right now in shortage, and it takes about 10 days to get the test results back. My aunt, by the time she got her test results, her COVID was over, right? She was already done with COVID, right? So by the time she received her test results, it was all done for. So doctors are working underground to advise people on medicine on their accord, based on symptoms. And they're working like drug dealers. They're working in the background and trying to make sure that people that are contacting them are trustworthy, because doctors are not allowed to do or advise anything until they get the test results. And test results are in such a shortage because tests are price controlled, and nobody can enter this field without having another set of huge list of permissions that they don't get. I mean, the entire thing is one giant government created tax hole of a mess. And yet the bugman media is saying that it's such a good thing that people are supporting India in the process, and they're sending help and they're sending oxygen plants or whatever. Well, the oxygen plants are first sequestered by the government and then distributed. And what's happening is that many districts and areas and villages, it's not all over India that everyone has gotten COVID, right? There's places that have got not a single case of virus since the last 90 days. If it was a market process, you would automatically distribute this because the demand from these places would really not be there. So wherever the demand is, oxygen can go there. But since the government is managing this, they can't really understand these things. They don't know where the demand is and where there isn't. They don't know when the demand is going to come from what place. So what happens in this process is that there's places where there isn't any crisis or any case of COVID since so many days, yet they're getting oxygen nonetheless. And in this time, they can then, all the oxygen that they're getting is just sitting there, or the oxygen that they have in these cities is just sitting there. And so the government then asks these places, or places where there is extra oxygen, to send them the oxygen, and then they'll distribute it. So you can see how big of a problem this whole thing creates. Now there's so much of a chaos that is happening because of the government managing everything and trying to manage everything. They've choked and put the entire economy in a stranglehold, and then they expect people to have all the things magically. And these are the kind of bugmen, globalist puppets as they are, that pretend that all the problems that are in the nation are just natural problems that are normally there, and they have no role in it. So they need some kind of a foreign supply of things and goods and services in order to get rid of these problems. Well, it's an entirely artificial problem. So all the countries that are helping India right now, should they be looked at as some empathetic saviors? No, they're absolutely as complicit as the Indian government in creating this crisis to begin with. And they're mass censoring people. They're arresting people for questioning the vaccine in the first place. They're forcing anybody who's jailed or arrested to get a vaccine. That is a new court order that anybody who's arrested right now should be given a vaccine. And of course, who's being arrested right now? Who's being arrested right now? The people who are questioning the vaccine. and people who are abusing the government, because there's laws against this. There's laws against sedition, whatever nonsense. And so people who are abusing, in particular, politicians and the management and whatever, they're being, you know, arrested. And the police are making bank in this situation because of the lockdowns, the way they are working, that nobody's allowed to go out. But of course, people are running short on supplies in their homes or whatever, so people are still breaking the rules and going out. Shopkeepers are breaking the rules, and providing goods, and transport vehicles are breaking the rules and trying to provide goods. And in all this black market that has been created, at every level, bribes are going out. So the policemen are living it up right now because they can take bribes from anyone who's breaking the lockdown at the helm of the baton or whatever stick that they have to beat people with, and the threat of arrest or whatever. So they take their money from the civilians that are breaking the lockdown. Then they're taking the money from the shopkeepers that are opening during the lockdown. Well, they have been allowed right now, but that was the case for a little bit. Then they can take the money from anybody who's transporting anything, where transport is not allowed, or when they don't really have the passes that there's another bureaucratic process that they need to move things around. So, people who don't have the passes, now they're paying the bribes. I saw the funniest thing about 2 days ago. I saw a mini truck, when I was, out and out myself in the permitted period. And the truck, what it said was, since the press is allowed movement, instead of getting the lockdown pass, the truck got a press pass. So the guy made a media company put a press pass in front of the fucking truck, and he's moving around now as the press. And what he's doing, of course, he's not a press. Everybody who's got a mobile phone is a press now because they can record stuff and do whatever. So he's got a press pass. But what he's doing is he's transporting all this equipment, all this food and supplies to shopkeepers right now. I mean, these are the real heroes during this crisis. But, this is how things are on the ground level. And this is the reality as to what's happening. Nobody should be, feeling bad or anything about this. Yeah, sure. I mean, you can feel bad about the people. But the people are as complicit during this as well for not recognizing this at all. A lot of people, I would say that the majority of the people around me at least, are very, appraising of the government or whatever still in this situation, saying that, oh, well, it's a crisis. What do you expect the government to do and this and that? Well, the government shouldn't do anything, and that's what they should do, so that this whole thing, this non-crisis of an event can be sorted out, because all the, 400,000 people in India doesn't matter a lot. So 400,000 people a day is like nothing. That's how many people probably get in a car accident or something like that in a day, or unreported, or any kind of accident combined on otherwise without COVID. So, or probably just dying from other disease or whatever. So that's how many people are getting infected. I mean, and 99% of them are recovering. Just that a very small amount of people are dying. So, we have, how much is it? 1.36 or 1.4 billion people. And out of this 1.4 billion, 4,000 are dying in a day. 4,000. 4,000 out of 1.4 billion is nothing. And that's how many people die from falling off of ladders or something like that. I mean, it's nonsense. It's nonsense. The entire thing is nonsense. It's entirely mismanaged. And so, that's all I've got to say on the matter, really. But this is the case of misplaced empathy. There's no empathy in sending anything to these places. In fact, you're exacerbating the problem because now, when you send supplies, the government has more resources to misallocate, and, that kind of increases the problem, makes the people question whatever is in place lesser and lesser than, having distrust in these institutions and wanting to replace them, wanting to get rid of them. So it makes, it's the same thing again as making the bad policies continue. And yeah, That's all I've got to say on the matter. It's purely leftist empathy. Britain shouldn't have sent it. No other country should have helped at all. They should have told India to get their act together. And I think one of the reasons why Britain actually helped, or any of these countries actually helped, is because it helps them look good as well, right? So it's the case of leftist empathy. It's political empathy. So that's they have their own incentives as well in sending these things. Oxygen plants or whatever. It's not really very hard to set up an oxygen plant or a concentrator or any of these things. In anywhere in the world, it's not very advanced technology to have an oxygen plant. Anybody can do it. The reason they're not doing it is, of course, because the market is not free. It's highly, highly, highly hampered. It's way more regulation, way more hampered than anything that you can imagine in the West. So comparing those regulations and those standards with the standards that are here is also not just. Even if you prefer, even if you prefer regulations, I mean, I don't think it's very reasonable to have 123 agencies and God knows how many other requirements, thousands of requirements probably to make a hospital, right? Because in such a crisis situation, you want as many hospitals to be made, you want as many beds, as many oxygen cylinders, as many heart rate monitors or whatever to be put there without caring too much about regulations. Because yeah, sure, I mean, maybe one or two people are going to die, or a small percentage of the people are going to die because of some kind of lapse in judgment or safety equipment or whatever. But think about how many people are going to be saved throughout this process without any kind of regulation or anything like that. And the market obviously sorts it out themselves. That if there's a problem somewhere, the news is going to spread or whatever, and they're going to try to rectify the problem themselves. Because they know that no customer is going to go in a place where they have a chance of dying. More from their security protocol not being followed than from corona or something like that. So, that's also one of the things that one should consider in this situation. But yeah, I think that's it. I'm gonna wrap it up. Thank you for listening if you did listen, and I'll see you in the next episode. And make sure to like and subscribe because that helps out the channel a lot.